If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. By way of announcements, we mentioned it last night at the deliberative session. Appreciate all the people that did show up there, but we've lost a couple of stalwarts of the community the past week or two, and we'd like to make a few announcements about that and then have a moment of silence. Town Council would like to offer our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Stanley Heinrich, who passed away on Friday, February 28th at the age of 68 3/4. Stan was an active volunteer within the community, serving as a Red Cross CPR instructor, volunteer EMT for the Merrimack Ambulance Rescue Service, MYA Little League umpire, Cub Scout committee chair, parents and teachers of Thornton's Ferry craft fair coordinator, and enjoyed his role as Stanta for the Merrimack Early Education Program and the PTA Kindergarten. Stan proudly served as an elected member of the Merrimack School District Budget Committee, as well as the School District Planning and Building Committee for many, many years. The Town Council would also like to express our deepest sympathy to the family and friends of Arthur Pete Gagnon, who passed away on Friday, March 6th at the age of 82. Pete and his wife Nancy owned Willow Pond Nursery in Merrimack for 30 years. Pete was a member of the Planning Board for over 39 years, serving several times as chairman, as well as a member of the Agricultural Commission for 9 years. He served his country in the Army National Guard from 1954 to 1969 during the Berlin Crisis and the Vietnam conflict, and was honorably discharged as a first sergeant. Stan and Pete's contributions to our community are very much appreciated, and they will forever be remembered. I'd like to have a moment of silence for Stan and Pete. Thank you. Continuing with our announcements, voting day, the official ballot vote will be held on Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, from 7 o'clock a.m. to 7 o'clock p.m. at the 3 polling locations in town: James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, the Merrimack Middle School, and St. John Newman Church. Please contact the town clerk's office at 424-3651 or visit the New Hampshire Secretary of State's website to find your specific polling location. Hopefully by now you're aware of those locations, but if you have any concerns at all, please contact us either at the town clerk's office or go on the website and you'll be able to find out based on your address where you're supposed to vote. Upcoming town council meetings: Thursday, March 26th at 7 o'clock in the Matthew Thornton Room is a regular session of the town council. Thursday, April 9th, 7 o'clock in the Matthew Thornton Room is also a regular session, and then Thursday, April 14th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the designated polling places is the ballot voting. Don't look at me that way. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. An upcoming Fire and Police Department car seat inspection event will be held this Saturday, March 14th, from 11 to 1 at the Central Fire Station located at 432 DW Highway, across the street from Watson Park and Buckley, right next door to Buckley's Cafe. Appointments can be made by emailing carseats with an S at merrimacknh.gov. The assessing office is accepting property tax exemption applications for the elderly, disabled. Those filing deadlines are April 15th. In addition, solar exemption applications can be submitted, and that deadline is also April 15th. On Friday, March 6th, the first meeting of the Merrimack Coronavirus Preparedness Task Force took place. The task force is being led by the Chief of Police, Denise Roy, and consists of representatives from the Merrimack School Department, the Fire Department, Police Department, and Town. The purpose of the task force is to monitor information being released by multiple valid sources to enhance, consolidate, and standardize communications regarding the coronavirus within the town and to address any potential response from Merrimack in the event of an outbreak. As it becomes available, information and updates will be posted on the town's website. That is www.merrimacknh.gov with the town website, and you can find, there's a link, and actually we have linked to the CDC and the state, and as they update their web pages, our web page automatically updates. And there is a town council representative, and that is Councilor Healy is on that committee as well.
Great, thank you. Comments from the press and public? Anybody that has a desire to address the council on agenda items could do so now. You guys can wait, since you're on the agenda. We have no seeing none. We have no recognitions, resignations, or retirements tonight. We have no appointments or public hearings tonight. Legislative updates from state reps. We have none in the presence. Town managers report.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. The town of Merrimack received approval to install the Purple Heart community signs on Route 3, 101A at our town lines. The town council approved Merrimack's inclusion in the Purple Heart community program in November 2019 to honor Purple Heart veterans living in Merrimack. Public Works will coordinate the purchase and installation of these signs, hopefully by end of spring. Though we didn't have a very good ice skating season this year, the rink was only officially open for a handful of days. The new lights for the rink are going to be installed tomorrow, Friday. The decorative lights will allow the ice skaters to enjoy the rink in the evening hours at Watson Park when weather allows. And because they're brand new and we don't want to wait a whole season to make sure they work, there's going to be a burn-in period probably from now until end of April to make sure the lights are working properly, because they're under warranty at that time. So just for the council. Yes.
Paul, are these lights going to be for the volleyball courts as well?
Because it stays so light in the summertime, we weren't planning on keeping them on. There will be a timer on those lights, and I believe the lights are planned to be shut off at 9 o'clock. Okay. So during the summer, it stays light till almost 9 o'clock, 8:30ish. So I don't believe we're going to be having them on during the summer.
All right, thank you.
Is that it?
That's all I have, thank you.
Any other questions for Paul on the town manager's report? Paul, do we have to do anything to, or have we done something to allow access to the parks after dark for the skate park?
That will be coming forth in Chapter 111, which I believe is on the agenda for the second meeting in April. I believe that's when Tim Tenhave, who's championing that revision, will be coming to the town for your input, and then we'll be finalizing it and bringing it forward hopefully sometime after that.
So something allowing people in the park after dark. is
After
gonna be
dark,
necessary.
we'll be in that. Yes.
Okay. Yes, Barbara.
Just getting back to the signs for the Purple Heart community. Once the signs come in, hopefully we will be having a ceremony when we install the first sign. That will include the American Legion and the VFW.
We have made contact with both the American Legion, and they were going to make contact with the VFW.
Okay.
And when they're in, we'll definitely let them know when we get them in here, because I'm sure they're going to want to do some kind of.
And I can be a contact for the VFW if you like as well,
Okay, thank you.
seeing I
Yes.
belong.
Okay. Moving on, we have no consent agenda or old business for tonight. Moving straight into new business. Number one item on the agenda, the Tears Foundation, quote-unquote, Angel of Hope Monument Discussion, submitted by the Tears Foundation co-chapter leaders Kim Badessa and Darcy Champagne. The town council will be presented with a request to consider donating space in the town of Merrimack to serve the community by bringing an Angel of Hope monument to New Hampshire. This monument is a symbol of hope and serves as a place for families to gather to remember and honor their baby who has passed away. So if you gals want to come forward, we can get another chair if all three of you want to come up. That's fine. No, you're gonna come,
Kim, right?
I'm Darcy.
Darcy, thank
You're
you.
Darcy.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
appreciate it.
thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having us and listening about our monument. We're really excited to be able to bring to New Hampshire. My name is Kim. You just met Darcy, and this is Jillian.
Hi, Jillian.
So Tears, like you had already mentioned, is a foundation in New Hampshire, but it's actually national. And so each chapter is run by volunteers in any state that is willing to have a chapter run by volunteers. So it's not in every state. Our hope is to be. We are in several other countries, Bahamas, Guatemala,
Puerto Rico. Kenya.
and Uganda. So it was started in Washington State, and so it's grown quite a bit. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so we raise money to help families in a tragic event that their baby has passed. That baby can be 20 weeks gestation, up to about 1 year old. There are several grants to help families with the passing of a baby at that age, and then we have other grants as well that serve families of older children who pass or who may pass from other tragic circumstances like suicide, substance abuse, and that sort of thing. So we help families financially, but then we also have quite a big emotional support within the community. So Darcy and I, along with a nurse at Elliott Hospital, run a support group as well in the community. It's held at Elliott once a month on the third Wednesday in the evening, where we serve many families emotionally through the loss of their child. So we have quite a big presence since bringing the Tears Chapter to New Hampshire in 2017. The end of 2017, myself, a group of a few other moms, decided to start the chapter, and Jillian and Darcy have been involved since the beginning as well, and we have grown quite a bit. So the first year we held our annual event, we honored about 17 babies. This past fall, we had our second big event, fundraising event. We honored over 30. We had over 300 participants in our big fundraising walk. We continue to grow. This population is really big, unfortunately, but we're really honored to be able to help them and do what we do. So thank you for having us here today.
And so we both do this in honor of our daughters who passed away. My daughter Matilda was our first child, and she died in 2016. So I helped run the support group in honor of her. And also our first year, we have a big annual, as Kim mentioned, it's called the Rock and Walk. And it's a big walk. It's a day where families can be together and feel hope and remember their babies. And we have T-shirts with our babies' names on the back, and things that we don't get to do with our children who aren't here. And the first year we raised just over $20,000, and then the second year we raised over $30,000. So it kind of shows how our presence in the community has grown, our visibility is growing, and also just as families are kind of hearing about us and what we're doing, I don't know that it's really an indication of the numbers of deaths increasing, but as a number of outreach increasing. So engaging those families. And we also have 2 remembrance activities per year, typically in the spring and in the fall, where we come and we'll either be out in nature or have some sort of remembrance token that we can create in our baby's honor, and then in addition to the support group that we do. So this would be, there are 8 other Angel of Hope monuments in the U.S., and the monument itself will be donated by Dignity Memorial, and they have a presence here in New Hampshire. And in all of the other states, they also donated space in one of their funeral homes or something like that, but their location is in Manchester, McHugh Funeral Home, and they don't have that kind of land there. And so for us, when we learned that New Hampshire was chosen as the chapter to receive this really beautiful monument, it was an honor because we're reaching so many families and we are such an active chapter. So that's a really great thing. But also we felt like this was a real opportunity to have the monument in the community versus in, at a funeral home or at a cemetery, something like that. We're really excited at the idea of it being more in a public space where families can come and gather and find hope, and have it be a little bit more out in the community so that more families can find us, because 1 in 4 women will experience a child loss of some kind, whether it be miscarriage or stillbirth or infant loss, or an older child death. And that's a big percentage. So we're just trying to serve those families and also kind of be visible out in the community. And so we have some pictures here for you to see of other monuments that are in the U.S. The one covered in snow is Alaska, so we know the monument can stand up to snow. The snow of New Hampshire, right? We'll be okay. But as you can see, the monument itself has a center base with an angel, a sculptured angel holding a baby, and then the 2 side pieces are butterfly wings, and a butterfly is a very important symbol with child loss of kind of the metamorphosis that a family takes when they lose a child, and also that hope and kind of lightness. So it's a really beautiful monument, and the babies' names, so it would be local New Hampshire babies' names or families in New England. Also, typically the unveiling is a big event where chapter leaders from across the country will come. Their child's names will more than likely be on the monument. It has to do with fundraising and all of that for getting your baby's name on the monument. And we can give you all that information. But it's a great opportunity to kind of have this hopeful symbol in the community, and also have all these people from across the country come to Merrimack, and it's a great kind of opportunity to have that positive story out there and bring kind of that exposure as well. So I think it's kind of a 2-part. So as far as the logistics of the monument go, I have the measurements here for you. Typically, it really needs a 15 by 15 space. And we're envisioning a green space of some sort. It would be a permanent monument, and it would need the concrete foundations poured and all that. But there are a couple different ways for installation. We could use a small backhoe, but it can also be hand dug. They've done it both ways. So the good thing is that Dignity has already installed 8 of these. So they have done it kind of different ways based on what different, if there are any land restrictions or things like that. There are ways to work around those things and make it work. So that's something we could talk about with you. And same thing as far as the benches that are there, and doing pavers versus sod, or if there are any sort of, rules in Merrimack as far as keeping within a certain historical context, things like that. We can work with all of that. And then, so all of that information is here. And the other great thing is that Dignity Memorial, in addition to creating the monument, installing the monument, they'll also maintain and take care of the monument in perpetuity. So there's no stress on the land or the town to take care of it in any way. So it will be taken care of by Dignity. So, any questions?
Oh, I'm sure. Let me just ask quickly to try and bring it out. What brings you to Merrimack as opposed to a more centralized portion of the state or somewhere around that?
So I'm Jillian. I live here in Merrimack, and I helped start the Tears Foundation. And then I grew up in Merrimack. My parents live in Merrimack. So when we were talking about the monument, I said, well, why not Merrimack? So that's why we're here. And I mean, I don't know any logistics of what Merrimack would allow and not allow, but I know there's beautiful parks in Merrimack, and so that's kind of why we're here, which maybe I should have started with that, but yeah, that's why we're here.
That's fine. I just,
One of the other really great things about Merrimack for the population we serve is most of our families are coming from the Manchester surrounding areas, and this is a really great centrally located town to really serve those families. One of the other really great things for our families is hospitals where they birth their babies and things can be really triggering and upsetting, and Merrimack has none of that.
Yeah,
So it's
it's
really
super
good for
neutral,
our
you
families.
know,
It's very
it's-
neutral and healing.
Yeah, we just wanted a place that wasn't upsetting for someone. We wanted a place that was nearby where they could celebrate and bring their families, but also it wasn't like, oh, I can't go back there, you know? So, and Merrimack also feels close by, but also a little off the beaten path and a little more quaint and, you know, not so urban. And that feels, we want the monument to be protected in some way too, so.
Okay. Pete, you want to?
And I kind of was thinking what Tom said, I was gonna ask that question as well. And I just have a couple real fast questions, ladies. Have you gone forward with this approach in any other communities? Or any communities in New Hampshire, I should say?
That we've proposed
Yeah,
this.
proposed this.
We've reached out to a couple of other communities. We're really hoping to have something that is nearby and beautiful, and so I know Merrimack was sort of the main location in this area, but if we were to move it potentially to the seacoast, we were kind of thinking of that, or maybe even the Lakes region, Laconia, something like that. But really, I think because we are all in this area, most of our families are in this area, so Merrimack for sure was top of the list for us.
Yeah. And I've read your brochures, and the group sounds incredible. I've never heard of you before. My only concern about doing this, and would be with any group, is I guess I'd like to know, is there any political or religious affiliations or anything like that? Because I just don't want to set the wrong precedent.
Sure.
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
know, so that one of the things in the back of my mind.
So, so to answer that, we don't. Tears, you'll notice there's a quote on the brochure that looks somewhat biblical. From our experience, we don't, that's there, but it's not a Catholic or Christian or any type of religious organization in any fashion. I think they like that quote because it gives comfort. We've talked to them about it because we didn't want to have families not come to us for support because of that. They chose to keep it on their brochure because they like the quote and what it means, that we are walking this journey with them, to show that they're not isolated after a loss. And that's really what that quote there is for. But other than that, they're not a religious affiliated organization.
Yeah, and actually, I talked to the national chapter and let them know that we really want to be as inclusive as possible. I would hate for a family who just lost a child to see that and go like, oh, that's not for me, because we're really not politically affiliated. We don't talk about politics or religion really, and so I'm in the process of having these reprinted with the quote removed, and that's been approved by national, because every chapter is different, every state is different, the population that they serve is different. So for us, we just want to be as inclusive and serve residents of New Hampshire.
Now, is there a particular location in Merrimack that you've looked at and scouted out?
We haven't.
You
our
had one in
resident
mind.
here.
Yeah, our resident.
I mean, I don't know how possible it is, but Watson Park is right there, right central, I feel like, right in Merrimack, and then with the water behind it. And again, though, I know there's a lot of things we have to follow before I could go there, but.
Yeah,
Some of the things you mentioned, like access and being able to operate, we can't dig more than 2 feet deep there. So
Okay.
there are restrictions in Watson
Yeah,
Park.
I figured as
But
much,
I
yeah.
agree, that does sound like a good place, because it affords you some room to bring in a crowd, which was one of my next questions, is
Right.
these multiple walks and stuff, do you expect to have them here in Merrimack, or do you hold them in Manchester, or what
Right now,
kind of
we hold
organizations?
them at, we just started this past year holding them at the Pinkerton Academy track. I happen to work at Pinkerton, so it was a good connection, and so we held them in Derry. Our very first year, we held the walk in Greeley Park in Nashua. So we try to keep it kind of central, south central New Hampshire. Pinkerton has worked out well last year. We're going to have it again next year, but it's not in a it's not, it doesn't have to be in the
It's
same
not tied to
location
this
all the time, and
monument.
it's certainly not tied to this monument, no.
No, typically our Rock and Walk is a separate thing. The monument is more of like a remembrance type event that we hold. So the fundraiser, the Rock and Walk, that's our big fundraising event that we're gonna get a lot of people, a lot of teams, family will come out for that. But the two remembrance events that we hold every year, they are smaller. Those typically you'll see parents come. They're not gonna bring their whole families. It's really to just have some quiet time to honor their baby. Those events usually bring about 50 people or so twice a year. So we would probably have one of them at the monument in some fashion. And again, that's more of a quiet, it's not really a big to-do like the walk is.
Right, I would say it would be more the unveiling of the monument would be a highly attended event, but we went, Massachusetts has one, and it's on the Cape, and we went to that unveiling, and I would say there were maybe 100 people, so even then, it's not out
not
of
huge,
hand.
yeah.
It's a manageable amount of people, and then there would be a ceremony every year for the people that were getting their babies' names engraved that year. So we'd always have a little something, but really the big event at the monument would be the unveiling at the beginning, and like I say, it would probably be about 100. So
Okay, and there's no restrictions or anything, it's a public monument.
public
It's there for
monument
anybody
for
to
everyone. Yes.
view and
yes.
whatever they want to do with it.
Yep.
Barbara?
How many names does the monument hold?
It's a great question.
That is a great question. I'm not sure what the max capacity is. That's a great question. I can find out.
Because I'm wondering, what do you do when you run out of room?
Right. I know.
Put it
Do you go to the back?
Right, you can go to the back.
Okay.
Yeah, at Washington State, that's where the headquarters is, and I know they've had their monument the longest, and they certainly have, seems pretty full on the front, and I know they did go to the back. So, I guess at a certain point, it does get full. I'm not sure how long that takes. That's a great question, but I'm not exactly sure the number.
We haven't encountered that.
No, we
I
haven't.
was just wondering if we needed to plan for a second space or something.
Right. I don't-
Or maybe another space in the state would work.
'Cause
if
you see,
got
you're
that.
seeing what I'm
I think
saying.
it
Some
can
of
get
these
to that.
pictures,
It looks
there's
like-
more than one monument.
Yeah, it looks
Well,
like there's
well,
Well,
there's
the
mine is two
monument
pieces,
itself
two
is
wings.
3 stones. So
Oh.
the centerpiece is the angel, and that has sort
I
of like a
understand now. Okay.
a poem on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two side, which are supposed to be butterfly
Which are the
wings.
names?
Those are the names.
I
They're
get you.
they're pretty small, and you can kind of stack them pretty good.
Okay, because
Yeah.
we were all thinking that it was just the one with the angel on the
Oh
side.
no!
We
So
didn't.
it's a
It's
3-piece.
You're right.
So
now.
yeah, it's
I
a
was thinking the
3-piece.
same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is why you need 15 by 15 as
Exactly.
opposed to just.
Yeah, because you have the
6 by
3
6, yeah.
stones plus the 2 to 3 benches depending upon the setting. So yeah, that's why you need the 15 by 15 for that.
Now, Pete, go ahead.
My question is actually for Paul. I know that Watson Park has a number of, I think, covenants on it or rules. And that would, I'd be curious about for a lot of our parks, is there anything in there prohibiting this, is what I'm wondering.
Not that I'm aware of. I
Mm,
mean,
I'm just going real, besides the digging at Watson Park and the no athletic sports.
no organized
no-
sports.
No organized sports,
That's the only thing I know.
that's the only thing. I can remember we were actually talking about moving the veteran, the veteran memorial that we were gonna do. We were thinking of moving from Fraser Square, the Fraser Memorial, down to Watson. So on that part, other parks, Vets Park, there isn't any that I can recall. Wasserman Park, the only thing is we can't build buildings, but this is, like a
Right.
beautification or a monument. And then
I'm
Ice
just trying
Field,
to think of a serene setting.
Abby Griffin.
Yeah.
you got,
Abby
you got,
Griffin. Well, I
but
was
Abby's
thinking
a
Abby
hill.
Griffin.
Abby Griffin's what I've been
You
thinking.
got kind of the hill, you got that area down by Bice Field, off to the left a
Yes.
little bit, that's near the water, the tranquility of
That's
the
true.
water running
That
down.
is true.
So there's a little
Could
area,
be
that?
underneath the trees.
right, you know, as you go, Bice Field sits in to the right, and then there's the concession stand.
Yep.
Right to the
Oh.
left of the concession stand, there's that little flat area that was kind of like a picnic area, but you got the river there,
It's
kind
under
of
the
deal.
yeah.
It's underneath the trees.
Over by Kids Cove
Where
is
the
what you're
MYA
saying.
Kids Cove,
building
Kids
is?
Cove, MYA Kids
If
Cove.
you go down there, there's
Then,
on
I
the
guess,
left.
I guess this
Behind
discussion
them.
leads me to, should we revisit this, let Paul and the ladies sit down and let's get a site determined, and then come to us, and so we can kind of have a final, this is where we're asking it to be and so forth.
Right.
But are we,
That was certainly my thought, that we would hear about what the monument was to make a decision whether
Yeah.
we're interested in moving
Correct.
forward with it. We weren't prepared to do anything tonight
Oh, okay.
as far as defining a specific place.
are we expressing our consensus
Oh, yeah.
that we're okay with the idea? I think.
I personally am. I think it's a great
I
idea.
think it's a great
Glad
idea,
to have
too.
it
Thank
being
you.
considered for Merrimack. I think it would be a nice touch to have it here.
we need to move on that already?
We probably should do something to that effect, but does anybody else have any questions or concerns? Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on. In some of the other states where the monument is located, have you had any experience with meeting other similar families that have struggled, that are working to eliminate the stigma that may be attached to families that have lost a child? I personally have a friend that's lost a child, and I have always found it very difficult to have the conversation, because you don't want to say the right thing. You don't want to
You wanna say
console the person if they're not looking to be consoled, that kind of thing. So I guess, is it coming full circle, coming here in New Hampshire, do you think having a monument like this is going to be able to have those types of conversations for people that may not have the experiences, as opposed to you ladies who obviously have had the experience, and do you think that'll go a long way, having a monument like that attacking the stigma that may be associated with the lost child?
We really do hope that the work that we do really normalizes loss for the community, because it's an isolating experience. And when the community around you is afraid to talk about it, it's even more isolating. So putting this monument in a community and in a space that can be shared by everybody, and just say, just going by that monument, if you've never had a loss yourself, and reading a baby's name as you walk by, and that really touches and means so much to even people you don't know. So
Absolutely, and I think too, it's almost like a conversation starter. It opens it for people, just people visiting might, they could have conversations right there at the monument, or even like for me, I know whenever I see a little girl running around who's about Tilly's age, the idea of seeing a little 4-year-old running around the monument or something would strike up it opens hearts, it opens minds to it, and it helps relieve some of that anxiety and stress of talking about it. And I think, having the presence in the community would do a lot of healing
Okay.
and open a lot of conversations.
Good.
I would imagine it opens up the idea of the acknowledgement that the child existed.
Yes.
Validates
And
that
that,
life.
That
and
validation
that
is
it's okay,
priceless.
and in fact, is encouraged to talk about them
exactly.
for the
Yes.
family.
Yeah,
And
so important.
Nancy, that's a good point, because before I was born, my mom was expecting, and she went 5 months before she miscarried. And I had no idea until I was 17 years old that my mom was actually, so kind of, a different generation,
Yeah.
from what these women are in right now. But it was the type of thing that back when you and I were
Oh,
growing,
it's very
you
different.
didn't talk, you didn't
A
talk
lot of
about
things
that.
you didn't talk
A lot of
about
things you
then.
didn't talk about.
Yeah.
So
But
I
it's
think this
true.
is a great
Which
thing.
see
almost
that
adds a
even-
stigma that doesn't make sense.
Yes, yes.
Finley, did I see your hand? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I can save it for the next. I was just gonna speak to locations. I'm in favor of having this happen. And, I definitely, as Peter suggested, I'm a visual guy, I have to go look in areas. But I'm more inclined to focus on Happy Griffin or Watson. I think those are
That is-
locations.
I think
Watson is a
central to
cool
town would be
place.
nicer that way,
Yeah.
but
Watson is a cool
Kids Cove
idea.
might be a good possibility as well. I hadn't considered it.
Plus it has parking.
I was just thinking,
Lon?
Thank you. I'm of the same mind as some of the expressions of the councilors earlier. I think it would be very wise to check with Mr. McCallie, perhaps DPW, Conservation Commission, somewhere. I have a question, and I don't want it to seem crass or unfeeling. Who is Dignity Memorial?
Yeah, sure. So they are, I don't know the way to, they're sort of the biggest North American provider of funeral cremation services. So they run funeral homes across the country. And they specialize in creating monuments and, headstones, things like that. But they're in the business of helping and supporting the grieving. And so they have a connection with the Tears Foundation National Chapter. And so they have a partnership and a commitment to helping make these monuments happen in the states where we have chapters that are super active, where we have lots of families involved. And so that's kind of who they are. And they have McHugh Funeral Home in Manchester.
Okay, so
So they have in New
there is
Hampshire.
an affiliation in this state.
Most certainly,
And
yes.
the reason I mention it is it names them as helping with maintenance.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
with anything the town of Merrimack constructs,
Mm-hmm.
there's a maintenance issue, and not to demean anything.
Sure.
Not to
No.
put too crass a.
No, you got to think about the logistics. No, I totally understand that.
So-
Yeah, and so they would maintain the stone and
They're
work
familiar-
with. Yeah.
You're familiar with them.
Oh,
Okay.
definitely.
Yes.
That's what they do.
And we
Thank
have a
you.
contact that we can share with you, and they're more than happy to further that discussion if you have anything more
I would
specific
think,
for them.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We can
would
pass that
love
along.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So, Pete, go ahead.
I'm just thinking about this, and I can imagine how it's gonna resonate with a lot of families, like it resonates with you three ladies. And
Is your mic on, or
Oh,
can you get a
sorry.
little closer to it? Thank you.
And I guess my question is, I'm looking at these stones and the number of names, and if this is gonna be the site in New Hampshire, we go back to the size of this location, and, I could see him needing a couple of stones. Just the thought of it, because there's a lot of folks who probably would wanna have their child's name on this monument. And so I guess we should look at, the site is adequate for expansion.
I don't even know personally if we have to anticipate that, because that's a bridge we can cross at another time.
Yep.
And it may work, or it might have a second location in the state,
Mhm.
is what I'm thinking. That's why I don't know that that's important.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we ask Eileen and Paul to work with department heads and other appropriate governmental bodies in the community to begin the process of identifying a location that would be suitable to accommodate the Angel of Hope Monument here in Merrimack.
Second.
Okay, Finley?
I was just wondering if Bill could make that plural, locations, because.
Locations.
Thank you.
Friendly corrections appreciated. Thank you, Finley.
Do you want to speak to it anymore, or?
I talked a little bit about it. I think everybody here has had their say, and I think we have a very unique opportunity to potentially provide a location for people in New Hampshire to come to our community and be able to, I'm not going to use the word mourn, to celebrate the life of their babies. And, excuse me?
To host a site.
To host a site, and I think it's, I think we should be very flattered that and honored that Jillian, our community, who lives with us, to come to us and ask for us to consider it. So I think there's a lot to be said about that. So that's why I made the motion, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have comments? So I wanted a little bit more clarification. You mentioned in your brochure from 20 months to 1 year old, but you're not restricting anybody from being a part of or joining your organization. It's just that's where you have funding to help with burial or whatever. I mean, that's specific your
Yeah,
target area, but.
There are different grants that are offered, so that's the biggest population that we serve. But as Kim mentioned, there are other grants available through the Tears Foundation for families that lose children through suicide or substance abuse, things like that. There's also they do a grant for helping families with final costs, so whether that be a funeral or a grave marker. I was able to just get a grant to have a grave marker for Matilda that is, just her name and me and my husband's name, and so it's really special and nice for her to have her own stone. And so, but it's for any child lost. That's just the biggest population that we serve, and so that's why it's highlighted like that.
Okay, because we lost 2, but they were before 20 weeks, so,
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I can understand where people are coming from.
Yeah, that's just more for funeral costs
Yeah,
and things
no, I
like
understand.
that. So
But
that's
it'd be
why
nice to
it's-
know that
no,
you're reaching out
a
to
loss
the
is
entire.
a loss, no matter what
Yeah.
stage.
In our support group and emotional support that we offer in the community, we're inclusive of everybody, any loss. We have families that have any gestational loss or infant loss.
Okay. Barbara, did you have another comment?
I was just thinking maybe this information could be shared with Pat
Yes.
as our town social worker, and that way she has it in case she runs into a situation where it might be helpful for a referral.
Good idea.
We're happy to provide more materials for her as well. Yeah.
How did somebody who's going through the loss get in touch with you?
Yeah.
Because I know the Elliott does a good job. I know Southern New Hampshire does a good job. I know they kind of point people in directions, but after you leave the hospital, after you're 3 days in the hospital and you leave, and it's just you and your wife looking at one another, how do you get in touch with your group?
So we have a couple different ways. We were invited to be part of the Perinatal Bereavement Task Force in New Hampshire. So they have a quarterly meeting where usually it's nurses, social workers, each hospital sends 1 or 2 representatives there, and it's a big gathering, and they go over how they're making an impact in the community and making sure they're up to date and doing everything they can for those lost families. They've invited us to be a part of it. I believe we're the only non-hospital attendees there, so we can really share what we do. So that is actually, that's next week, we're doing that to really update on this year, what we're doing. They have our materials that they give the families at their time of loss, and then the families can use that contact in their own time to reach out. Come to our support group is one thing, or reach out on the website and let us know what they want from us so that we're not overstepping and we can really respect what they're looking for. So there's an application they really have the choice to identify, I'm just looking for financial support, I'm not ready to talk to someone, or I don't need help financially, but I really need to talk to someone. So there's a lot of control that they have, and we're able to support and kind of read off of them.
What website is that you're referring to?
What's your website?
The tearsfoundation.org.
Okay.
And you
The
can
Tears
also,
Foundation. Okay, it's the
Yeah.
one that's on top of your letter
Yes.
here. So it's www.tearsfoundation.org.
yes. We also have a Facebook page where a lot of families follow kind of what events we have going on. So that's just at New Hampshire Tears, NH Tears.
okay.
We also, on the website, Kim and I, as the chapter leaders, our cell phone numbers are available. We also have an email address, which is newhampshirechapter@thetearsfoundation.org. So there's lots of different ways to get in touch with us. And that's also how we, I was that person looking at my husband, and we went to the support group, and that's how we found one another and everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions on our motion?
On a
Bentley?
motion, just a real quick question. Are you a Lorento?
I am. Well, I'm a Pouliot now.
Right.
Yes.
Once a Lorento.
Once
Always.
a Lorento, always a Lorento. Yeah.
I think my son had it.
You know everybody.
Finley name dropping again.
Really?
Nice going.
So we have a motion on the floor to, you want to rephrase it for us or phrase it for us?
Basically, the motion was asking Eileen and Paul to work with the department heads and anybody in the council, anybody with our local governmental commissions to meet with a representative from the Tears Foundation to begin to identify locations that would be suitable for the monument to be placed so that the celebration of these babies, they'll have a suitable location for the
Okay.
celebration.
Is that, everybody clear with that? So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 700. So we'll be in touch
Okay.
to try and work
Thank
this
you.
further to see if we can get this squared away. Do you have a time schedule that you're looking at?
We would love to have the unveiling either in the fall of this year or the spring of next year.
Okay.
That's sort of our
Okay.
goal.
All right.
But we're open.
So we have a few months to work it.
Yeah.
Is there a contact to send Dignity's information?
Send
We'll
it
get with
to,
you.
to Paul McCallie.
Perfect,
Great.
thank you.
All right. We
Or,
can't thank
or
you enough.
through Becky.
No, our
I
pleasure.
mean, you've been communicating through Becky, I
Yes.
believe.
Yeah, we
and-
have.
And she
Have my email.
coordinates all of that good stuff.
She knows everything.
Great. Thank you so much for your time and your
Thank you very
and
much.
your compassion.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, folks. Moving on to item number 2, grant acceptance for the Merrimack Police Department, submitted by Captain Eric Marquis. The town council to consider the acceptance of the, quote, radio reprogramming grant reimbursement initiative, unquote, from the state of New Hampshire Department of Safety, valued at approximately $5,800 to address portable radio reprogramming with a goal to further build interoperable communication capabilities within the state, county, and local police and fire departments during an emergency pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. Captain Marquis, thank you. It's all
Good evening.
yours.
I appreciate you having me here tonight. So I'm here asking for the approval to accept this grant awarded to us by the state of New Hampshire. The state has a goal to improve communications within the state's public safety agencies, including local police, state police, fire, EMS, as well as the sheriff's department. Part of the process towards that goal is radio reprogramming. The state basically wants to add a common channel or channels to all agency radios, which would allow agencies to more effectively communicate during a major event. So you have to respond to the airport or one of our, maybe the high school or something like that. You have multiple agencies responding. There'll be a common channel for them to communicate on. What we would do is have our vendor complete the work on our radios, which number 116. The cost is $50 each, so the reimbursement to the town of Merrimack would be $5,800. And we're told by the state that the reprogramming is going to be mandatory. So if we don't accept this grant, we would be
Paying it anyway.
We would have to pay it anyway. Exactly. So.
Are there any other special requirements associated with the grant that are going to make it onerous?
No, I don't believe so. No.
Okay. It's pretty straightforward.
It's pretty
We have
straightforward.
116 and $50 apiece.
Yep.
Is that $50 covered the overall the whole cost? or is
According
that-
to our vendor, yes.
So they're willing to sign up for that?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions? Pete?
Captain, I know we went through this, I want to say 5 years ago, reprogramming. I know they went to the bandwidth thing and they had that.
Yep.
But so I guess I'm just curious, what changed, or what are they doing with this reprogramming that's enhancing it from what we did before?
I'm not really sure where it stood 5 years ago. This is kind of new to me as well. And this is kind of the beginning of the process with the state. I know there's a few other steps, and I don't even think that it's all put together yet. So I think this is just how they're getting going on it. So I couldn't really answer that.
Because I know back then that we went through a similar thing, narrow banding, and then we had to make sure all our radios had interoperability in all the channels. So I just was reading, I'm trying, are we adding channels, are we taking, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just the one common channel for all the agencies, one or two, I believe. So when you have a major event, it's interoperability, basically, so.
So this talks about channels 1 through 48 or something like that. Are they talking about putting it on a specific band, like 40 or 41 or something like that? or-
I don't think it's really been determined. I think the vendor has to get involved with the channels and trying to figure out which channel makes the most sense for us.
Okay.
Some of that technical stuff is kind of beyond me.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, looks like we need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that the town council accept the radio reprogramming grant reimbursement initiative from the State of New Hampshire Department of Safety, valued at approximately $5,800 to address portable radio reprogramming with the goal to further build interoperable communication capabilities within the state, county, and local police and fire departments during an emergency pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15, and furthermore, that the town manager or her proxy be authorized to sign any documents necessary to accept and expend.
Motion made by Bill and seconded by Barbara. Any other comments or questions? Finley?
If you could just speak to, the show charges that have been highlighted in yellow. Speaking of, I'm just trying to put it out there, there's $5,800 or so covering the updating and everything, but these extra charges, if things occur, do we want to do these things with PPP charges? Or just minor
I think the only thing we're looking for is the channel per radio, so it's the $50. I think you have the option for some other, you can add channels. You can have more than the one channel, and I think that's where the cost starts to come in.
It's not what, we're not planning on doing those.
Don't.
We may eventually want to do it, but we don't have to do those things.
Right, as far as right now, it's just the one channel that would be covered by the grant.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to accept the grant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you,
Great, thank you.
Captain. Which brings us to item 3 on our agenda, under new business. Get my page back. The second quarter financial update submitted by Financial Director Paul T. McCallie, Assistant Town Manager. The Finance Director, Paul McCallie, will review the key financial information of the quarter ending December 31, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, again.
Thanks for your help with the other project earlier.
No problem at all. It's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. Come before you to talk about the second quarter financials that ended December 31st, 2019. Health insurance. Health insurance is costing us, compared to last year, about $120,000 more. That was due to a rate increase last year and the mix of our population. We have some vacancies throughout the town. However, we are technically, if you looked at staffing from 2018-19 versus staffing from 19-20 during this period, the staffing was up a little bit, and of course the cost of insurance went up, as well as our mix. And when I say our mix, what I do is I do an average of single, two-person, and family. And when we do our budgets, and that's what we look at, there is plenty of money in the appropriations to cover this. We have planned for this increase based on our mix, but the costing of it is based on people switching from single to two-person or two-person to family, and vice versa. So, but we've account for that when we do our budget. It's just showing up now as actual coming through. New Hampshire retirement is basically a little bit flatlined in all groups from 18, 19, 19, 20, and that is because the rates didn't go up, number one. And like I said, staffing levels are pretty consistent between the 2 years. This does not take into account the change we did with the fire overtime. We'll see an increase there. And police, even though they've been short a couple of officers, they've been increasing overtime, which you'll see on the next slide, which makes up for the difference in New Hampshire retirement. Overtime costs, this slide's a little bit hard to see because it's so broad, and with fire and police really spending money. The fire overtime is up a little bit from prior year, and this really took into account that November, December timeframe where we jumped up to 10 people per shift constantly. And of course, police, they've been short-staffed a little bit, so they've been making it up. And plus, the overtime that was planned for the Special Investigation Unit and other planned overtime.
Do we see a corresponding drop in their salary line because
There
there's
would be,
missing people?
yes, there would be, and that would cover any overages, right
Most
now.
of the variances, yeah.
Right. But then this really just breaks out the other ones. You'll see general government's up, communications is up. Basically, all the overtime is up across the board on most of these departments. Highway's up because of the storms that we had. Last year through December, we didn't have a lot of storms, but remember this year through December, we had that big storm on the 2nd and 3rd, which was a very long storm for them to plow. Some guys were 40, 44 hours of straight through until it was over, and they put in 60, 70 hours in that week. So that's why the overtime is
Yeah.
spiked a little bit for that period. Looking at the overtime for highway, though, they're still within it. Hopefully, we can get through the next 6 weeks or so with no other snow events, and we should be good there. Communications is up because of staffing that we had. We're going out right now looking for a couple of part-time dispatchers, and that usually helps offset some of this overtime since we don't have any part-time. We have one part-time dispatcher since we don't have other part-time dispatchers. Overtime's up a little bit.
General government is up a lot more than normal?
Yep, and that is, oops, where am I? And that is because of, why can't I get to the slide I want? There. That is because of our IT department,
Oh,
and being short-staffed in IT. And also, we've been having some significant issues with some telephone. And it's not the new system we put in, it's a provider. The current provider we have, their switch went down, and it hasn't been the same since their switch has come back. So there's a lot of calls at 1, 2, 10 o'clock at night. Hey, phones are out. Got to pick up the phone, call them, see why it's here, come into town hall, do some stuff. This week, I think Wednesday, one of those days, all our analog lines to the police department went down, and that was at 1 o'clock in the morning. So they came in, and it didn't get resolved until almost 6 o'clock. So, that's why some of the overtime is up.
Pete has
okay. Pete?
Paul, does the general government include the town clerk's office?
No, they're in other departments.
Because I know that they had a whole staffing manpower
Right.
issue as well.
Right.
Yeah, I was
That would
gonna
be in
say.
your other departments, which includes DPW admin, town clerk, tax collector, assessing, and those things. So it's there. But general government would be town manager's office, finance, and IT.
So assessing and town clerks and all are part of other government?
Other departments. Other departments.
Okay.
Revenue. Good news is auto registrations are higher than they been in the last umpteen years. That's the good news.
That might change this year.
That might change a little bit this year. Building permits are up too, as we know. We have the building boom. The bad news is our revenue for interest. It's not as high as it was last year, but it's still significantly higher for the first half of the year. I don't see a problem with us hitting our goal of $800,000 this year. However, as you know, the markets are going haywire. Fed cut rates. We got emails this week about some of our savings accounts and money that we had out that they're cutting our interest rates, to be expected. Going forward, there's a talk that they're going to cut them again, maybe once or two more times. I don't understand how the Fed would be able to cut significantly again because the rates weren't that great to begin with, and are they going to go back to a zero? But it's more for a future eye on the interest rates
Yeah.
to see how we rebound from this, and hopefully it's just a short-term fix and not the start of a global recession as some people are touting it right now, that we're in global recession mode. Hopefully, this is just a blip in the radar. But with lower interest rates means more building permits, better loan rates, people will start doing some additions if they feel that they can get money for it and their jobs are secure. Buying different cars, buying cars again, because they'll take advantage of that. So those things, that coupled with gasoline prices not going down too quick at the pump, but crude prices really dropping. I think it's like $35 a barrel, which has been one of the low spots in quite a while. That, manufacturing of those things and that will help with the purchasing of automobiles and purchasing of products because the crude will be lower on everything. That's all I have as a presentation. Those are basically the highlights from the second quarter of the year. We are in good shape financially. The town still is financially strong. We have significant appropriations to make our numbers. I do not see a problem. Keeping an eye on welfare. What President Trump said last night about hourly wage earners and the virus will go a long way. Because those are the people hit, and those are the people that would show up for PAP because they can't make a mortgage payment or they can't make a housing payment, and the elderly on the other side. So we're keeping an eye on our welfare department and see how we come through this pandemic. Also, keeping an eye on the revenues such as interest and the automobile registrations and things like that sort, but they are still going strong. Automobile registrations are still going strong. I think yesterday they were getting ready to do the April mail-outs, and I think there was 2 paper boxes full of just people getting renewal notices for April to come back in and do things and things of that sort. So.
Peter?
Paul, I'm looking at your document, your expenditure report, and I know you mentioned welfare you're keeping an eye on, but I see highway and solid waste disposal are at 33% and 36% of their budget remaining. Is that a concern?
Actually, for solid waste, it's not a concern because we front load the trash contract that we have.
Yep.
So we take the 8,500 tons that we normally do at times our rate, and we front load a contract with Waste Management because we know what it is. So that's why they're a little bit lower. DPW highway, they have a lot out of the money. They have a lot tied up in the bridge over at Bedford Road Bridge. So they have a lot of that appropriation already tied up in purchase orders. So their everyday operating expenses are in good shape. It's just overall because they got big expenses tied up, like the bridge is a $3 million project. So that takes a big chunk of their money right off the table right away that we gear for. So that's why that's there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nancy?
I'm not sure if this is appropriate to ask now, but since you brought it up, the Bedford Road Bridge, is there any idea if spring in fact is coming early, which it looks like, will they
Any
be
updates?
pushing the work to start soon?
Director Fox will kill me for saying this, but
We'll protect you.
they are going to be gearing up in the near future and getting back on site. The one problem we have right now is the same problem we had in December and when we started this project. We are waiting for utility companies to do what they need to do. So the utility companies have to come in and do what they need to do so we can open up one lane of the bridge to finish the rest of the
And of course,
work we
we're
need.
pushing the utility companies
Yes,
to come
they are.
out
They're
and do
pushing.
it as we speak.
We are trying as hard as we possibly can to
So
tell
as soon
them.
as that's done,
As soon as
it
that's done.
sounds like you can start again.
Yeah, they're going to start gearing up. You're going to
Contractors.
start seeing some activity at the site. You'll probably see some equipment brought to the site, things of that sort. So they're itching to go as well. You
And
know, it
they're
hasn't been,
capable of going.
and
is
they're
the
capable of
point.
going.
Okay.
It's just, what do we got? It's not our contractor,
What
because
has
if
to
it was
happen first, yeah.
our contractor would have loved to have this project already completed.
Right.
He's relying on the utilities and trying to get them there and schedule them. Even though they were scheduled, they seem to have forgotten that they've promised us certain things, and we have to keep reminding them and getting in their work queue again and again and again.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Paul on the revenue or the,
Or anything else.
whatever this is? Anything? The
Revenue report.
revenue report for the second quarter. We're gonna be getting a third quarter one pretty soon, or?
March ends the third quarter, and I'll get it in the middle of April, if not May.
Okay,
We're trying.
thank you. So that brings us through the majority of our budget, our meeting agenda. We're up to minutes. We have two sets of minutes tonight. They're sort of like a book, but
got that right.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the town council meeting minutes of Thursday, February 13th, 2020 as presented.
motion's been made and seconded to accept the minutes of Thursday, February 13th. Does anybody have any corrections or changes? Well, I do.
What I miss?
So on page 23, very first word, it's a carryover from the previous page. It says, or any other taxes the government implies. I think I meant to say collects. I might have said implies, but that's because my mouth and my brain don't necessarily work together always. Page 23.
So it should be applies.
It should be collects,
Collects.
that the taxes that the government collects, because I'm talking about whether or not they actually are going to give anything back to people. And then on line 6, it says one law is going to be put down that will stop that. And I think I meant to say in place. That laws can always be changed. There's nothing, any one law is going to be put in place that will stop a future law from being changed. So if we could change down to in place, it
Sure.
reads more clearly to me. And then on page 24 of 25, line 37, there was a motion made by Counselor Woods and seconded by Counselor to recommend Article 2.
I missed that.
I wonder
Good for
who
you.
was that recommended Article 2? Or who wants to have their name put in there to be forever? Yours?
Sure.
Nancy? So if we could add Nancy, Counselor Harrington, on line 37, that would be good. Those were the changes that I saw. If there are no other adjustments, we have a motion to accept the minutes as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the town council meeting minutes of Thursday, February 27th, 2020.
Is there a second? Second, moved by Bill, seconded by Nancy. Do you have any corrections, Bill?
I actually have, it's corrections on page 8, line 10. Jeff Daly, it's Jeff, the English spelling, Geoff, Daly, Daly. And I was functioning on line 23 of page 8, that his name was Farrell, not Farrell, if we could just check that. Moving forward. On page 13, line 21, quasi adjudicatory should not be capitalized, and I believe there should be a hyphen in between quasi and adjudicatory. On page sorry, should have tabbed these, and I didn't. On page 28, line 13, under transportation improvement plan, it's in parentheses as TIP, but then you go through the document, it'll say TIP or it'll say STIP, which was the State Transportation Improvement Plan. If we could just, wherever it says TIP, just make it consistent with TIP, that would be great. There's a couple places where it reads STIP. And that is all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? So I have a couple that I wanted to ask for input on. On page 13, line 34, it talks about the entirety of the appeal and the email submitted earlier in the day will be made part of the record. The question I have is, does part of the record mean part of the minutes, or is it just on file somewhere? Do you know the answer to that, Paul?
Well, the letter was read in.
Was that one, the appeal?
Yeah, on the appeal, I read the letter as
You
to.
read the
Sam
letter
Gobain's
that they wrote
Correct.
that day, but you didn't read the entire appeal.
No, I did not. So when you talk about the appeal, I always function that is usually attached as an appendices to the part of the minutes. That's always been my understanding.
Okay, but since it's not here, I just was questioning that. So it should be attached as an appendix.
Correct.
And
Okay.
probably noted as such,
Mm-hmm.
to be attached.
Appendix A,
Appendix A or something, yeah, okay.
and we'll attach it.
All right, thank you. On page 24, at the end of line 16, it says, but did not say that they would toll the 30-day requirement. I believe she said waive, or meant waive, unless toll has a special meaning in this case.
No, I think you're correct.
I think she did say toll though.
I think she did say toll too. Because that was,
Is there a legal meaning to toll something?
I don't know, but I remember her saying that.
Could you check
Yep.
for us, please? Because I would think waive is what I would have used in there, but. And then at the bottom of page 28, it says, at the end of the line, and starting it close to VIP of Friendlies. And I think that's supposed to be VIP or Friendlies, close to.
Yep.
Friendlies is not part of VIP, or the other way around. And that was all I saw. So if there's no other changes, we'll vote on that motion to accept the minutes as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Finley's abstaining. So that passes 6-0-1 with Finley abstaining. Comments from the press, comments from the public, comments from the council. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Monday, let me back step. As all of you know, I serve as the governor's designee to the New Hampshire Drinking Water and Groundwater Advisory Commission. We had our monthly meeting on Monday, and Commissioner Scott, at the end of the meeting, floated an idea that's being bandied about at the staff level at the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. They are putting together a proposal to submit to the Groundwater Trust Fund that would ask us to allocate a specific amount of money to the DES for them to administer and test private wells in the state of New Hampshire. They were looking for a consensus from the commission as to whether or not we would be at a minimum receptive to the proposal being brought to the commission, which unanimously there was a lot of head nods for Commissioner Scott to go ahead. So there are no details behind what they're looking to do. I suspect that the philosophy at the commission level has been for municipalities to have skin in the game. In other words, if you're looking for a grant or a loan, we expect you to be chipping in a little bit for your particular project. I think that's the consensus that we've asked DES, that they may do like a 50/50. You contribute 50%, we'll loan you 50%, we'll grant you 50%. Obviously, I imagine there'll be a set of criteria that is involved. But for our community of Merrimack that has, with a lot of our private wells, as we're all intimately aware with Representative Thomas's plight with her private wells, I imagine that there are other people in our community that are also impacted like Representative Thomas, and I think it's I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be getting a proposal from DES to ask the trust fund to support that particular project. So like I said, it's embryonic, it's early on. I don't know any much more than that, but DES is looking at it. So I was really happy to hear that. So,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Barbara?
And on the same topic, I'm hearing that at the Londonderry Town Council meeting, which came after our meeting for the St. Gobain permit, they are talking of approaching the state and the waste and the groundwater fund as well to do exactly that same thing, and that may be why it was generated and why the interest was being voiced.
Okay.
And if it works, I think we ought to consider what that means for our community as well.
I'm not familiar of any ex parte conversation between the town of Londonderry and the Department of Environmental Services, but I had talked with Clark privately about a year ago that that the state ought to consider doing something, whether it be allocated through a line item in the budget, whether we consider a process at the commission level, whether it goes to there are several different water boards up at the state level that have a limited amount of funding. I had mentioned that to Assistant Commissioner Freising, so coming full circle, like I said, I'm very optimistic and curious to see what DES is going to have. So I think there's potentially some good news on the horizon, not just for us, but for other people that have been impacted, Bedford, Litchfield, obviously Londonderry, parts of Hollis, Amherst. So,
Right.
it's exciting.
It's nice to see Londonderry finally getting involved.
You-
I mean, they were great to come have representation here, and that was greatly appreciated. And I was somewhat surprised by it because they really have been hands-off and didn't consider it a problem. So apparently they've decided it is a problem. Interesting.
Good.
No complaints.
Anybody else? Comments from the council?
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Even without the parade in Boston.
We can have our own.
Go for it.
Motion to adjourn.
So, motion to adjourn by Bill Boyd, seconded by Barbara. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? We are adjourned, 7:00.